even though things like this have happened from time to time. And there's no guarantee that there won't be a COVID-20 or a COVID-21 after this one. And this is as you say, it's the nature of chaos. And so I want to share some ideas, and then we can, at the end, if there are any questions, we can have a meditation also.
Yes. Brother, before we start, I would like you to briefly tell us, how are things in Brazil currently?
Well, in Brazil it has a silver medal at the moment in terms of the COVID Olympics. It's in second place. There are over 100,000 deaths and over 3 million cases. But the real numbers are probably 10 times more than that. So most places have been in lockdown since March. So you can imagine the effect that has on the economy. The infrastructure here is not very good, probably like many countries. Most third world countries will be having difficulties. And so we are trying to cope, I suppose. There's a lot of unemployment, a lot of hunger. And so we've even organized our centers to prepare food packs for people that come to the door wanting food. So it's pretty grim here. And there's no sign that things will ease in the near future. Schools have been also shut down. And so I think kids will lose 1 year of their schooling because, let's face it, they tried to do classes online, but it's not possible because a lot of the poor people don't even have cell phones. So not easy. Anyway, we're trying at the moment in our centers here. I'm actually been in our retreat center. We've got a few retreat centers in Brazil. And so, of course, here it's clean air, clean water. There's not, we're not able to have activities. So it's interesting. And so we've been trying to organize ourselves to do work. And in fact, I've personally never been so busy in my life because of the work that we're doing online. For example, here I am I'm not in São Paulo at the moment. I'm in a little country town, actually in the middle of a forest, near in our retreat center in the mountains here. And of course, we're not aware of what's going on in the world outside except through the news. But it's interesting that here I am in a little tiny place in Brazil, being able to speak with all of you. So there are positive things coming from this present chaos, and there are also a lot of negative things. For example, people have been thrust into living with each other. Maybe because they don't have anywhere else to go, they have to put up with an estranged wife or husband, and so there's a lot of tension in relationships. It seems like 20% of domestic violence has grown. There's an increase in domestic violence. There's an increase in drug taking and alcohol consumption and so many things, because people are pretty desperate unless they have some internal mechanism. And this is where meditation comes into things, so that can really help us. So the ones that are inclined to reflect on things, they will have time on their hands. We're obliged to live more simply, so that's a good thing. The environment is very grateful that we're able to not use our cars so much. Things like that. Industry has gone down, so the air is much cleaner. There's a lot of positive things that have come out of this, but also a lot of negative things because people are not able to deal with chaos. As you said, chaos theories tells us chaos. In fact, at the end of, I wrote a book together with another Australian called Brian Bacon called In the Eye of the Storm. We wrote it in 1999. And the book was specifically about how to understand chaos in an organizational context. because we can't control chaos. Chaos is any system, any living system, which is dynamic, so in movement, which is complex. And then according to the level of complexity, it becomes unpredictable. So you have things like the weather patterns or the financial markets or even our own minds, traffic, all of those things are chaotic systems where you see they are very dynamic, very complex. And there's another aspect too that we have difficulty of understanding, because all living systems self-organize. That means if I don't lift one finger to do anything about my life, it will organize itself in a way maybe I would not like. The universe organizes itself. You look at any flower. That incredible, the rose comes out of just a little cutting of another rose plant. And that beautiful rose was there. It just sort of comes out. If you look at the sky, the clouds just form in a dynamic, complex way. And they self-organize. The whole universe self-organizes. So those people who are organization maniacs, let's say, the perfectionists, they have a lot of problems in dealing with random things, apparently random things, because chaos is not random. It's actually a very high order of things. And I'd like to just explain a little bit about this, because let's take a traffic accident at a major intersection. Let's say on the evening before a long weekend or a extended holiday in a country. So let's say there's an accident and a major intersection as people are trying to organize themselves to get home, maybe to get away, to go somewhere for the holiday. And of course, that just disrupts the traffic totally. And people will say, yes, the traffic is chaotic. But what's happened is an event. And that event automatically obliges all of the other things in the system to reorganize themselves around it. And of course, if the road is blocked, then some cars go over the sidewalk, some cars try to get back, and, it's a mess. But if you wait until 4 o'clock the next morning, there are no cars around. Somehow or the other, the system sorted itself out. So our living systems, our markets, our traffic, our cities, our minds, our lives, our politics, our stock exchanges, they are all living systems which self-organize. And how do they self-organize? They self-organize themselves around events that pop up, like a traffic accident. Let's say there's the wheat crop in Argentina fails because Argentina is a major exporter of wheat to the world. It fails, and that puts up the price of flour and therefore bread everywhere. And so a failure in a crop in a major exporting country will affect the stock exchange in London or in New York. And we can see how much they're affected even just by rumors. The President of the United States or the Prime Minister of England make a comment and it shakes the stock exchanges all around the world. So what's happening, it's not absolutely random. There are little events, micro events, macro events, which makes everything sort of move together, flow together, and so on. And it's to understand this, I need to, first of all, if things are dynamic, I have to understand the flow. I cannot just analyze things as if it's sort of, frozen, static. And this is the problem of the reductionist thinking. We reduce everything to its components, and then we try to understand how they work together. But that's everything is dynamic. Nothing is static, nothing at all. Even if you try to analyze an atom, and this is where quantum physics comes in, we stop to try to analyze what goes on inside of an atom in terms of its electrons. The very act of stopping and observing it affects the atom. So we can never know how it really is. So anything we observe, we affect. We affect what we observe, and what we observe also affects us. So most people don't get that, you know. They try to organize chaos. You know, they try to put things in order. And they become very exasperated when things are not ordered according to our plans. Things do not move according to our desires. They move according to these events that are happening all the time, that pushes one thing one way and pushes another thing the other way, pulling and pushing. And this is how our lives form around us. And of course, the whole thing of the virus is very typical of this, you know. If you sort of map virus infection, it's pretty amazing to see how one can affect 10 others, or then those 10 affect 10 others, and who's going to get it? Who's going to get the virus? Are the ones who have a greater immune protection in a way. Like you'd have 10 people in contact with someone who's carrying the virus, and not all of them catch it. So there are also factors there which are more spiritual. There's something called karma involved here. So there's a lot of factors. Things that happen to me because somehow I have attracted those things to happen. Whatever it is, whether I get sick, or whether I get rich, or whether I get sort of whether I have an accident, whether someone, so there's something inside of us that makes things happen too. The way our minds work and the way the reality forms around those minds, it's a continuous dance. But this thing of self-organization is like, we create the road systems in a city, for example, but then, you know, and it looks very nice on a map, you know, all of these sort of squares and one-way streets and two-way streets and avenues and bypasses and overheads and freeways within a city and all of that. It looks beautiful on paper. But then you, for example, Sao Paulo has 8 million cars, because it's a big city, about 20 million people. 8 million cars. So you've got 8 million drivers using that grid of roads at the same time, you know, especially at rush hour. And of course, what happens is, looks nice on paper, beautiful. We can analyze the traffic beautifully, but people wanting to go different places at the same time. They wanted to go at different velocities also at the same time. And so what looks nice as a map, when you put the cars onto it, it becomes chaotic. But it's actually not chaotic. It's very, very highly organized around different events that come from inside of us and that are happening outside of us. So some of the lessons that I would take from the moment, for example, it is a global crisis without precedent. It's the most severe economic recession in nearly a century. It's already done enormous damage to our health, job, well-being, and so on. In fact, it showed very clearly how precarious our human systems are. You know, the virus itself is so tiny. It apparently is. I heard a very sort of graphic description of the virus. It's like genetic excrement, just to use a pretty powerful phrase. It's just a piece of genetic material that somehow has been expelled, and it's 10,000 times smaller than a grain of salt. So this tiny, tiny, tiny little thing has put humanity against the wall, in a way. We've not been able to respond to it yet. And even if we do respond to it, we're already in this incredible, I think the economic consequences will be much worse than the disease itself. So there are three scenarios if we look at them. The pandemic will become more serious, and there will be a second wave of infections also. And there'll be, as the winter comes into the Northern Hemisphere too, there'll be another sort of wave of sort of lockdowns probably. And one scenario, which is probably not at the moment on the cards, we'll be able to avoid another major outbreak. So this virus, and of course they're talking about vaccines at the moment, but really, truly, it won't reach people who need it until mid next year or something, probably, because even if they get a vaccine, the distribution is still going to be a huge logistics problem. And people are talking about getting back to normal. You know, even if everything dies down, nothing will be the same as it was before this lockdown. People have, as I said, there are positive sides and negative sides. Some people have destroyed their relationships already. Some people have renewed them. Some people have strengthened their family ties. Some people have absolutely broken their family ties that I know about. Some people have, who you wouldn't have expected to die have died, and that creates huge problems, But basically, expecting people to get back to normal in terms of work and school and so on, there's a lot of things that we have to take into account because people have learned other things. I know people in this lockdown who decided to study a different career, who've gone after courses online and so on, and so they've been very, very keen on developing. But there's been an environmental, of course, this is an environmental problem. And if we look at the macro picture, how come our sort of, I would say, our very, very strange relationships with animals has probably been responsible for the apparition of this virus. The very, very horrible eating habits of some people, you could say. It's probably responsible from where this virus came into place in the first place, because it's a cross-species thing apparently. So it's an environmental thing. It's a relationship between human beings and nature, basically, and it's a bad relationship. It's the same bad relationship, in fact, that produces hurricanes and earthquakes. It's not a sort of an almighty God, for example, who's making things happen. There's a very sort of not very healthy relationship between human beings and the environment. And this period, like we used to talk about the Great Depression, my parents went through it, was very, very, my dad, for example, had to leave school at 12 and get a job. And so, and then he joined the Merchant Navy. And so then 10 years later, there was a Second World War. And he got caught up in that. So in his 20s, since he was about 12 until he was about 25, his life was absolutely disrupted in a way. But then if we're talking about the Great Depression, this will be called by history as the Great Lockdown. And it's 10 times worse than the global financial crisis of 2008, 2009. And if you look at a picture of the impact on the economy, on the GDP of different countries, the leading economies of the world, if there's a second wave, the impact will be minus 10% on the economy, probably, something like that. It's absolutely bizarre. And if you look at, for example, how the behavior of stock exchanges since the beginning of the year is like, just down and down. Then suddenly it comes up a little bit, then it goes down again. and exchange rates, and everything sort of being bulldozed in a way. And of course, there's a lot of effect of this in our work habits and the workplace itself. I know a man who has a lawyer's office in Sao Paulo, and he has 30 lawyers working for him. And since lockdown came, he decided he has a place in the countryside, and he went to stay there and did everything from home, as well as all of his other lawyers on the team. So they're all working from home. They like the experience, and he's decided not to go back to he had a downtown office. So every day he would spend maybe an hour, 2 hours in the traffic there and back because of the nightmare of the traffic jams. I know specifically in Jakarta and other places in Asia, the traffic is terrible. I mean, in Manila, I took 45 minutes to go about half a kilometer near the airport in Manila once. In Hanoi, I was there once, and it took me half an hour to cross the road. So you know, he's decided, I'm not going to go back and face that traffic everywhere. He's decided to close down his office and continue to do everything in a virtual way. Like him, I know many, many people. The Bank of Brazil has decided to close up a third of its premises in the different cities of Brazil, because all of the things they've decided, and they've been able to successfully organize themselves online. So they don't need physical premises, and this will have an impact on our cities, and you know, we'll see a lot of empty places, I suppose, places for rent. In this little town where I live, 45 of the commercial establishments have closed down. So you'll see for rent signs everywhere, for rent, for rent, for rent. And so it's, you know, how long it's going to take. We may get over the virus, but it'll take us years to get over the financial collapse. And so the only ones that are really full-time, as far as I can see, in Brazil anyway, the ones that really have a lot of work to do, the IT people. Since other activities have gone down a lot, they're slowly opening up here and there some of the things that, you know, most people have gone back. I saw yesterday that Virgin Atlantic has filed for bankruptcy, which is, you know, a huge airline. We use it from here, Brazil even. So this idea of looking at the world in a different way, it really is a challenge also for leadership. So as people slowly come back to work, for example, what are some of the qualities? I saw this list in Forbes magazine. How will a new leader act in this world as people slowly come back to work, and some things slowly return towards what we would consider normal, but of course they won't. The hope is there, but the reality will be another thing. So they expect, and this article said, a leader coming back to work, he has to become sort of like a counselor in chief, like he has to be very empathetic with his people, because his people have gone through a lot of hard things. Maybe they've lost relatives, maybe they've been on half salary, or maybe they've had to sort of renounce the salary altogether for a couple of months, things like that. Maybe half of their colleagues have been laid off, and so it's been a huge emotional impact on people in the workplace. So this new type of leader, he has to be very reliable, very fact-based, you know, no fake news. These days, there are so many rumors floating around about this and about that, and what drug can help face the virus and so on. We see the craziness of some of the political leaders of some countries advocating different drugs and all sorts of processes where they really don't know at all anything about it. So a new leader in this new scenario has to be a very clear communicator. And whatever he says has to be reliable, has to be fact-based. So it has to be very honest, without ambiguity, you know, not double meaning, not leaving things in the air, being very honest about it. And of course, that will be very much appreciated, and it creates confidence, it creates trust. If I'm sly or furtive or, you know, vague, it does not inspire confidence. A new experience would be to manage virtual teams in a way. If I'm just used to physical face-to-face meetings to get things done, and I'm not used to having this, you know, this online experience, then I won't be able to, you know, I won't be able to deal with my people in the best possible way. So this new type of person has to be more resilient, more flexible, more adaptable. And as I said before, he must have learned by now that he cannot control chaos. The only thing we can do with chaos is prepare ourselves for it, and also be very flexible. When I said that before that it took me half an hour to cross the road in Hanoi, it's not because of cars, because of motorcycles. And I was at an intersection where there were no traffic lights. And it was just a continuous stream of motorcycles, absolutely astounding, you know. And they managed, you know, the whole thing doesn't stop. Everyone just sort of, you know, motor scooters mainly also, they just sort of flow in a way. It was only when I went into the flow and I sort of danced my way across the road in a way, stopping quickly, moving quickly, being flexible. So in a way, that's the sort of thing that we need to with the situations that come up in face of us, either at work or at home. You know, I have to be flexible because this whole leadership thing is absolutely appropriate for parents also. It's not just being leader of a team, it's a leader of a family. Also, the article that I saw recommended that we are more humble, and showing that we are not infallible, that we don't have all of the answers. And that humility, of course, opens up for cooperation easily from people. And this communication thing of, I have to be a very active listener. I have to, you know, what is he saying? What is behind what he is saying? How can I help that person? So this active listening is very good. But of course, this is very easy to make lists, but how? How to put those things into practice? And this is where meditation helps us. Sorry. You know, we grow up and we learn how to speak, we learn how to talk, we learn how to walk, maybe we learn how to dance and sing. We learn how to ride a bicycle, but no one has ever taught us how to think. And this is our problem, because we imagine that thinking is something that just happens to us. But it's, you know, the flow is so, if we wanted to think about chaos, the very first place where chaos affects us is in our own minds. A few years ago, before the World Cup in Brazil, the World Soccer Cup, was in 2014, I was working with the airport authorities in the north of Brazil, at one of the regional airport authorities. And of course, the games or the matches were all organized to take place in 10 different cities. So those 10 different cities had to have their airports upgraded to receive this extra flow of visitors. And this was 6 months before the matches started, before the World Cup. And only one of the airports had become ready, and a few others almost ready. But they were, absolutely pulling their hair out about stress. They were so stressed out because they couldn't do it. I asked them, joke in the middle of my sessions with them, I asked them, what's the busiest airport in Brazil? And they said the São Paulo domestic airport. They have a flight every 90 seconds or something in the peak hour on a Friday evening or a Monday morning. And then I said, okay, what about the airport of the mind? Because the mind is like an airport. Thoughts come in, thoughts take off. How many thoughts do you think we have in a day? And I told them let's say we have 1,000 waking minutes in a day, because there are 1,440 minutes in a day, 24 hours. 1,000 waking minutes. And I have something going in my mind every second. That's 60,000 things. If I have a more fractured mind, and I have something going on in my mind every half second, it will be 120,000 things. And it's a mixture of memories and bits and pieces of our lives and habits and inspirations and ideas and sensations and worry, especially. We notice with the virus, anxiety has gone up so much because, and of course, the sale of anxiolytics, the drugs that deal with anxiety, has gone up also, because people with an uncertain future will become anxious. And anxious is just feeding our minds with all sorts of thoughts. So here I am trying to understand the chaos outside of me. But inside my mind, there are, so much excess of waste thinking and useless thinking. I saw a study that showed that 97% of our worries have nothing to do with reality. It's just our own fertile imagination. Only 3% of our worries actually happen. And it's a very good advice, only when I have all of the facts about something should I then worry, if possible. But if I don't have all of the facts and I'm just worrying, it's just generating more and more excess thinking. And of course, if my mind is confused, I won't be able to deal with the practical things around me. I won't be able to deal with a difficult relationship or the death of a loved one, or suddenly my income has dropped by 50%. I won't be able to deal with it. So what I'm saying is that we may not be able to control anything outside of us, but we can control our response to it. We can control our response. And to do that, I have to, if I've got 120,000 things going on in my mind every day, I can definitely reduce the quantity and improve the quality. So less thinking and better thinking. And this is where meditation can help me. I need to learn to be a detached observer. That means I move back from things, I move back. And as I move back, my perspective widens, you know, just as I'm moving back in my chair here. As I move back, my perspective widens. I can see more, I can understand more, and I can decide better. So in meditation, the very first step that we take is to, first of all, just as let's say I'm sitting on a seat, wherever I am. Here, in between the two sides of the brain, a few centimeters back, is the control center for our consciousness. It's where my thoughts come, where all the sensations come. This is why it's remembered as a third eye, but it's not on the forehead, it's back a bit, you know. It's actually near the pineal gland and the hypothalamus, the seat of consciousness. So the first thing I do is to sit there. In the same way that I can be sitting comfortably on a physical seat, let me sit here inside in a comfortable way and observe things, you know. Try to see things as they are and not as you think they are. There's a story about a Zen monk from Japan. He wanted to learn from the Chinese how they understood meditation. And he spent 5 years in China. And when he came back to his monastery in Japan, they asked him, you know, he spent 5 years meditating in silence, you know. When he came back to Japan, his fellow monks asked him, "What did you learn? What did you learn?" He said, "I have learned that eyes are horizontal and noses are vertical." What do you mean? You know, what do you mean? No, just like things are. Things are what they are. Things are not what I think they are. People are not who I think they are. So if anyone resides in my head, my version of that person is different from how the person really is. It's only my version. So all of the people that inhabit our gallery here inside of us, you know, our loved ones, our friends, our colleagues, we have an image of that person. And that image carries with it sort of a caption. Be careful with this person, he's very difficult. This person is very sweet and lovely. So we carry these ideas about people in our minds, which are very different from how they really are. Do you think that how you are remembered in someone else's mind is the same as how you really are? Probably not. So let people be, and this is what the whole thing about detachment is. Try to see things as they are and not as I am. You know, here generally we see the world as we are, not as it is. And this is this whole thing of being detached, to be detached from the body. The body is my instrument. I have hands, you know, I have eyes, I have a mouth. The conscious being at the moment, I'm using my mouth to speak. These words are forming in here and I'm offering them out. So I have a body. Also, I have roles. I'm not the role. I'm not any role. I'm not a mother. I'm not a father. I'm a spiritual being, and I have a role to play in this world. I'm the actor, and I have roles to play, different roles, but I'm not the role. This helps us to administer our roles. The third thing is the story that I form, my curriculum, you know. At the beginning of the year, I was in a conference and there was a fellow, this was in Delhi, and the fellow next to me, who looked like an important person, he gave me his card. And on his business card, it had his whole curriculum. He did this, he did that, and he did this, you know, about 16 letters after his name. I'm not that card. I'm not anything that's written there. That's just been my story. And the future is no There's no guarantee that the future is going to be the same as the past. So let me be a little bit free from my own story. Then I can see more. Then I can understand more. Then I can decide better. And to do this, I really need to learn to meditate and introduce meditative pauses during the day. You know, I personally, every hour I stop for a minute. I start off the day with meditation. But I found that 1 minute every hour makes those other 59 minutes more productive, more interesting, less tiring. But if I plunge into things and forget about my consciousness, you know, at the end of the day, I'm going to get into a state of collapse very easy. I have to develop a positive vision towards myself and towards others, no matter what they are, no matter what they've done. And this positive vision of myself, seeing my own value, is the basis of self-respect. And therefore, it's the basis of being able to respect others. Even if I don't like them, I need to respect them. I need to cultivate these habits in the same way that you water a plant so that it can grow. A plant needs sun, it needs water, it needs good soil. And so these are the things that I need to give my life more the light of knowledge, the water of care and love. I need to cultivate a soil of good values. I need to give myself space so that I don't strangle other plants. And I need to give myself the time that I require to grow, basically. Otherwise, I can't get in front of a plant and scream at it, grow, grow. I have to cultivate it. Because I'm holding the brush that is, you know, painting my future. It's not happening by itself. It's as if I'm sticking out my subtle hand into the future and painting the road upon which I'm going to walk. And just to remember that meditation is not becoming with an empty mind. It is actually becoming with a full experience, not an empty experience. And if I'm really full of good things, I will be silent. There won't be movement. So maybe we can have some, what do you think? Should we have some questions now, or should we have some meditation now?
I think let's start with a few minutes of meditation. Let's have a taste of guided meditation.
Okay, I can do that. Okay, so anyone can do this anywhere, anytime, this short experience that we're going to conduct now. So sit very nicely on your seat. Sit very nicely. Just become aware of the moment now, what's going on around you. Try to listen to the sounds. Try to identify movement around you. Feel the temperature. You can feel that. And feel your own breathing. This miracle called breathing, the air coming in and going out. Just become aware of that. In the same way that you're surrounded by 360 degrees of things, physical things, you're also in the center of your life. So there are people and objects that somehow connected with you, or even maybe dependent on you. Just see yourself in the center of that network. And as you become more stable and more peaceful, you have an immediate impact on the people and things connected with you. Just feel that. Your meditation is much more about feeling than thinking. Feel how just by calming down, you're actually calming down your whole network of things. you're taking some time out from the busy world so that you can go back to it with more power, more insight, and more clarity. Less drainage. You won't get drained by situations. Then in the same way that you're seated on your physical seat, like we talked about before, just visualize a subtle seat behind the middle of the forehead, in between the two sides of the brain, a few centimeters back. Sit there mentally and feel how things come to you. Sensations, all sensations reach you at this point. It's here that you take your decisions and think things. You process everything. It's from here that all of the systems of the body, whether they're conscious or automatic, they're controlled from here. So sit there. And now, okay, you have become stable, and in becoming stable, you have a chance to feel that your inner qualities are intact in a way. So I am this peaceful being. Nothing really can take that away from me. It's my inner nature, my inner property. But I've forgotten that, but now I remember it. So meditation is much more about remembering. So remembering that I am this spiritual being going through this human experience. I have a body. I am this spiritual being. I'm the soul. My nature in my, my foundation state is peaceful and disposed to be loveful, content. So I remember my qualities. I remember this inner dimension of things. When I am just with myself, preparing myself to face the things outside of me. I remember my connection with this divine dimension, my connection with the one who everyone remembers one way or the other. The one we call by different names. So I feel internally very, very stable, very, very peaceful, very loveful. And I start to even feel more powerful, more strength. Certainly I experience more clarity. Even if I had to lose everything else, I still remain me, this spiritual being. So little by little, we come back to, we open our eyes a little bit more. We retain this consciousness a little bit longer with our eyes open as we come back to normality, the places where we're sitting, and we open our eyes completely. Okay, that's a sort of easy meditation experience that anyone can do anywhere.
Thank you,
Okay.
brother. Thank you. That was very, very peaceful. So just before we start with the question and answer, just would like to share again to refresh our minds about what you shared with us today, that we need to practice to become a good communicator. We need to be honest and reliable, which creates trust in others. And another thing that really touched my heart is what you said is that our mind is like an airport. We have thoughts landing and taking off every second, and so many thoughts that come, and that we cannot stop chaos, but we can stop the chaos that is going inside our mind. And I would like to add to this, although this global crisis has undoubtedly brought waves of misfortune, the situation has certainly highlighted some important life lessons that we should all learn and carry with us as we continue to adapt to the new normal. There is a silver lining that lies amid the ocean of chaos. Being under home confinement compels us to slow down for once and take time to consciously think of how and what we spend our energy on. Maybe we can pick up a book that we have been wanting to read, watch a movie from our bucket list, find ways to catch up with friends, and set goals for ourselves. It is the perfect window to restart and focus on yourself, which can be refreshing as it is empowering. Now, Brother Ken, we have a lot of questions today.
Oh.
So the first question is, many of our friends in the retail business, especially post-COVID, have been severely affected by the huge increase of online businesses. Do you think there is a chance that sometime in the near future, people will get fed up of sitting at home and shopping, and they miss experience of going out to shops again? Is there a revival possible, or is it finished forever?
I don't have a crystal ball, but I imagine that people are keen to get out and about. Because it's not the same, is it? We are gregarious people. We like to be in community. So this social distancing is not natural for human beings. So people, but of course, we have to practice at the moment. But I was just thinking of the parallel, for example, with e-books and physical books. I mean, e-books, of course, are great because they're very convenient. You don't have to carry around some weighty volume. You can look at it on your Kindle. But it's very different from having a proper book, right? And when you give a gift, for example, you won't give an MP3 file or a Word doc file or a PDF file to someone as a gift. You'll give them a book, right? So in a way, we like to touch things. We like to interact with things. And I think as soon as it becomes legally possible, let's say, people will want to go back to doing things the way that they were used to, instead of just getting things online. I believe that. I talked to some people the other day. In fact, one person has a shop, and his clients have been telling him this: when will you open? When will you open? Because we want to go there. We want to go there. But I've got no crystal ball, but I have that feeling that as soon as it's possibly viable, people will want to go back. The thing is that how long can we hold out? And I think the ones that are having greatest success are the ones that can reinvent themselves quickly. So perhaps it's useful to have, like restaurants, for example, they're not operating, but all restaurants have developed delivery capabilities so that they're delivering lunches and meals, right? I went along the main street of this town yesterday where I live, and every single restaurant had delivery capability offered, And so the people are reinventing themselves, and probably the future will be a hybrid. It won't be totally online, and it won't be totally hands-on. That's all I can say.
Next question, brother. Some of us may not be very highly qualified for a marketing or executive position, but highly motivated. How can the correct work ethics make up for the lack of experience and make us excel at whatever it is that we do?
Well, again, I would just say that if we clear our minds, and this is, again, it's about trying to control the possibilities, isn't it? It's like trying to control the chaos. If I have a clear mind and I develop self-respect and I'm fairly intelligent, even if I don't have the qualifications, if my own clarity will give me insights into the sorts of things that I can do. And of course, I have to have courage. Let's say there are 10 candidates for a job. 9 of them don't particularly have very high self-esteem, even though they may have qualifications. And one of the person doesn't have great qualification, but he's really, really confident in himself and shows his experience of life. He has to be a good relationship person. And that's the characteristic that we need these days. A few years ago, Google did a survey called Project Oxygen, because they wanted to know how come what were Google's work ethics and the competencies that they required in their people. It was very interesting because even though it's a highly technological company, it's one of the leaders actually of technology in the world, even online technology, which is so important these days. So it's just like taken for granted that you have a very good technical background. But their managers, number one, is the leader as a coach, leader as a good communicator, leader as a good listener. And then of the 8 or 9 managerial competencies, 7 of them are absolutely very human ones. And just 2 of them, you have to be good strategists, and you have to have the last on the list is the technical capability. So if you are a good human being and a good relationship person, and you're very, very confident in yourself, you'll probably go further than someone who's overburdened with qualifications, but really is not a good people person. Okay?
Yeah. The next question is, how can business leaders address the impact of cultural differences tactfully within the organization?
First of all, the leader, him or herself, has to be beyond those cultural differences. Otherwise, it won't work. I can't have prejudices and be a real leader. So if I really am genuinely seeing the human being rather than the color of the skin or the differences in language or different cultural differences, and I'm trying to work with that diversity, it won't work. I have to be the example of genuinely being beyond the cultural differences myself. Then I can address them, because you see, the word communication comes from Latin, communicare, Común means common. So the basis of communication is what I have in common with everyone. Now, there may be, for example, a difference. Of course, there's a difference in salary and a difference in position between the president of the company and a gatekeeper of the company. But what do they have in common? They are both human beings. They both want to be happy. They both understand what constitutes respect and what constitutes disrespect. They both cry if a loved one dies. They both get angry in similar ways, or they get happy in similar ways. So if I can see what I have in common with my people, then I can communicate properly. But it has to be genuine. I'm not, the differences between us culturally and socially and physically even, because of skin color and so on, they're very superficial. But we all cry in the same way. We all get happy in the same way. So if I can see myself, I can see people as individuals who have worth, rather than seeing them with different skin colors and different accents, then I will go a long way in cultivating that sort of a culture in my workplace.
Next question is, what advice would you give a young woman starting out in her career in this very competitive, men-dominated workforce?
Well, I think it's the same, it's not easy, but it's a similar response to the other two responses. I can only prepare myself internally. I can develop my self-esteem. I can therefore have faith in myself, no matter what. I have to be free from this in my own way. I have to not see myself as a woman or a man. That's not easy, because I'm a spiritual being that has a feminine body or a masculine body. So I'm this being rather than I'm a gender. So if I can go beyond my own gender complex, and I can develop my self-awareness and self-esteem to an extent that I really have confidence no matter what, then I can be successful. Otherwise, I'll have a permanent excuse of not being able to go forward because those damned men, or those stupid women, if I have that sort of approach to genders, then it won't ever work for me. I have to go beyond my own gender, because I'm not a man or a woman. I'm a spiritual being that has a masculine or feminine body. It's not easy, but I believe that that's, maybe find a job where there are other women who are also, that also sometimes doesn't work, because they're also extremely competitive amongst themselves, the women themselves. So I have to go beyond it as well. I don't know if that's the right answer, but it's the way I understand it. I've never really considered that for myself. Yeah. I remember I had a job once where I was working in a laboratory, because my background is an industrial chemist. I worked in research, and I was working for a perfume company. And the guy that I worked with, and we were both together, he had better qualifications than me. He'd studied more, but I treated people much better than he did. And when the promotion came around, who got it was me and not him. So it works. Anything else?
Yes. What is more important in the long run, discipline or passion when it comes to work?
Wow. I don't think you can isolate those things from each other. because you won't, if you don't have discipline, you won't be able to keep up your passion. If you don't have passion, you won't have the determination to be disciplined. So both of them are equally important, and actually we have to have a balance between both of them. I remember I did some consulting work for a soccer club here in Brazil. And the next year, actually, they won the first division championship. So it was like, and of course, in Brazil, football is like soccer is like a religion. So it's a huge thing. You help a team and they become the winners of the championship. But what we did there was we tried to get people, because all of the people who worked in the board of the company, the main managerial positions, they were all voluntary positions. And so in this case, they had to be less passionate, because they were so passionate they became blind about everything. We want our team to win. We want our team to win. So we had to get them to think in a more disciplined way. And of course, that was the secret to their success, to reduce the passion a little bit and bring up the discipline, and then they were able to work together. Because passion without discipline is blind, and discipline without passion is completely dry. And they won't work unless they work with each other. Okay? Anything else?
We have one more question from YouTube, brother. There
Okay.
is conflict management. It's about conflict management. There is a saying that conflict is needed for betterment. As long as we are strong, shall we adapt with the conflict? Or on the other hand, there is controversial with peace and love. So what is it that we must do?
Yeah, well, I think if there is some sort of conflict can generally conflict happens because two people or more want to occupy the same space, mentally, physically, or culturally. Conflict will happen when I have an idea, someone else has a different idea, and we want that idea to have the same importance. So conflict happens because we want to share something. Let's say a mother and a father fighting all the time. What do they have in common? Again, we go back to that. What do they have in common? They've got a 5-year-old kid crying in the background. And of course, the mother and father fighting so much, they've ignored the fact that they are parents and that child is there needing their help. So if we can recognize conflict is a great opportunity to recognize what we are trying to share. And the next step would then be, okay, how are we going to share that in a more appropriate way? And then you can work out. But often conflict is ignored because people are embarrassed to talk about it until it becomes too late. It's swept under the carpet until it's, too late and too expensive to do anything about. So first thing, identify the difficult conversations that you need to have and with whom. And if possible, if you can't do it by yourself, get someone else to help you mediate it. Because all of us have conversations that we avoid because we're too sort of wary or too embarrassed to bring the things up. And again, I can't correct someone if I am incorrect. So I can only correct someone else if I'm in a correct position. So conflict is a great opportunity to discover what we have what we're actually sharing and how to share them. They should be dealt with, not brushed under the carpet and not ignored. Not just that spiritual idea that we can't have conflict, not possible. That's not a good way out either. We should celebrate differences to come to an understanding. Okay?
Yeah, we have two more questions, brother. Is that okay?
Yeah, quickly.
Yeah. To excel in business, having a great business vision is not always enough. How does one inspire people to invent new possibilities and shape the future of their organization?
Wow. Yeah, well, I've helped many companies do exactly that. And I agree, vision is not enough. But the vision should be clear. It should be specific. There are three things that are important: the focus, the will, and the capability. Focus is, what are the few things that make the difference? What are the few things that can inspire us? Because if the focus is inspiring, then people will move towards that and they will engage better. And if it's just the vision of one person, no one else buys into it. They just fold their arms, Oh, the boss wants that. Okay, let's help. People are not engaged. They're just going to the work for, to earn money. They're not interested actually in what they're doing. And that's often the case. I think 60, 70% of people go to work just to earn money. They've got nothing to do with the vision of the company. And sometimes the vision is just something that has been done by a few people at the top. And I used to go into companies and say, okay, what your vision, values, and mission? Tell me. Very few people could say what the vision, values, and mission of the company were, because they're not engaged, disengaged. So if you have focus on the few things that make the difference, and that focus is inspiring enough, then you'll have the will, you have people motivated, you'll have people engaged. But then there's no use to have just the focus and the will. You need to have the capabilities. Develop the capabilities or hire them to get to that focus, to get to that vision. So those three things have to work together, because if you have focus and will, but you don't have the capability, it's like an exercise bicycle, a lot of work and no future, no forward progress. If you have the will and the capability, but you don't have the focus, it's like a loose hose, a loose water hose. It's turned on, but it's just going all over the place. And if you just have the focus and the capability, but not the will, everyone becomes very cynical and critical. So you need the three together. Okay?
Okay, the last question is, what advice would you give a woman going into leadership position for the first time? And how do you think the issues of women and top leadership will evolve in the future?
I think what the world needs at the moment is the woman's touch. And that's gradually becoming more and more apparent. If you look at the last 50 years, how many prime ministers and chancellors and so on. If you look at the response to the coronavirus, the ones that had the better responses were all women-led governments, like in New Zealand or in Germany. And so the world is gradually realizing that the woman's touch is absolutely necessary. Because if women were leaders, we probably wouldn't have wars, for sure, because who would send their own children off to get killed? So that's definitely going to happen. But I don't know about companies, because some cultures are absolutely set in their way, especially I would say Latin America, Asia, and so on. They have a patriarchal system that stretches back forever. And so if you're a woman going into a leadership role, don't make a big deal with it. Be correct, be just, be fair, be passionate, be disciplined, as we said before, be communicative, listen to people, but at the same time, be very determined and very very good strategist, and then, you know, it won't make any difference. You'll go far. You'll go far. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, brother. Thank you very much for your time. And thank you everyone for joining us today. Our next session is on coming Saturday, which is the 15th of August at 4 p.m. Jakarta time. I've dropped my number at the chat box, so do send me a message if you would like to get updated on the upcoming events. And Brother Ken, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you all. It's been lovely to be with you. I don't know any of you, so but I think that we've been together, that we know a little bit more about each other after this hour or so that we've been together. Okay.
Thank you. Have a nice day, brother.
Thank you. You too. Bye bye.
Om Shanti.
Om Shanti.